Morning. Senate Armed Services Committee meets today to consider the nominations of Mr. Anthony M. Curta to be Principal Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, Mr. James E. McPherson to be General Counsel of the Department of the Army, and Mr. Gregory E. Maggs to be a Judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. We thank you all for joining us this morning. We also welcome your family and friends here with us today. As is our tradition at the beginning of your testimony, we invite you to introduce those who are joining you. It's a standard for this committee to ask certain questions in order to exercise its legislative and oversight responsibilities. It's important that this committee and other appropriate committees of the Congress be able to receive testimony, briefings, and other communications of information. I'd ask that each of you provide responses to the following questions. Have you adhered to applicable laws and regulations governing conflicts of interest? Will you ensure that your staff complies with deadlines established for requested communications, including questions for the record in hearings? Will you cooperate in providing witnesses and briefers in response to congressional requests? Will those witnesses be protected from reprisal for their testimony or briefings? Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear and testify upon request before this committee? Do you agree to provide documents, including copies of electronic forms of communications, in a timely manner when requested by a duly constituted committee, or to consult with the committee regarding the basis for any good faith delay or denial in providing such documents? Have you assumed any duties or undertaken any actions which would appear to presume the outcome of the confirmation process? I tell my colleagues as soon as we have a quorum, we will be moving the nominations when we have a quorum. Mr. Curta, the military readiness crisis has impacted every service from ship collisions, aircraft crashes, and vehicle accidents to personnel shortages in critical roles like aviation and cybersecurity. The department is struggling to make do with budgets that are too small, unpredictable, and driven by politics rather than strategy. Sadly, personnel and readiness are often hardest hit by the tough choices made in this environment, and the ones who lose out are our men and women in uniform. I am particularly concerned with the military's ability to recruit and retain the high qualities Americans required to maintain an effective all-volunteer force. Outdated policies like the Defense Officer Personnel Management Act, or DOPMA, mandate an overly rigid system that is increasingly unable to cope with the demands of the modern force. One of today's most pressing personnel challenges is the worsening pilot shortage. We've heard over and over that flying time and career stability are crucial to solving this crisis. Yet DOPMA-driven personnel policies require pilots to assume numerous staff assignments, relocate every 2 to 3 years, and complete military education courses, all in order to be promoted according to inflexible timelines. All of this is done to turn every officer into the military's next general or admiral. Well, not every officer wants or needs to be a general officer. And it's about time we figured out how to allow for more variety in military careers. If confirmed, this committee will look to you to help us modernize the personnel system to make the military more effective and efficient and more attractive to young Americans interested in public service. And Mr. Curta, I want to point out that the time I spend with young pilots who are making decisions as to whether to go with the growing demand of the airlines and staying in the military, their complaint isn't money. Their complaint isn't money. They want to fly airplanes. And that's what they're not able to do. 60% of our F-18s aren't flying. We don't have readiness. We don't have training. And of course, the tragedies that have taken place on, like the USS McCain and others, is frankly unacceptable. I look you in the eye and I tell you, 100-hour work weeks is too long for a young member of our armed forces. And they are working 100-hour work weeks. That has to stop. Otherwise, you're going to see more tragedies such as took place with the recent collisions. Admiral McPherson, if confirmed, you will serve as legal officer to the Secretary of the Army and the Chief Legal Officer of the Department of the Army. As a former Judge Advocate General of the Navy, you have deserted. You are well aware of the importance of the relation. That was a joke. As you are well aware of the importance of the relationship between the General Counsel of a military department and the top JAG for that service. Our Army faces a number of challenges, from the readiness crisis to glaring gaps in capabilities and modernization. Meanwhile, our soldiers face an operational tempo that is not slowing down. If confirmed, this committee expects that you will work closely with the service's military and civilian leadership to ensure that the Army has the requisite legal authorities required to address these readiness modernization challenge. I look forward to hearing your views on these issues, as well as on the military justice challenges, such as sexual assault, that continue to be a focus of this committee. I want to point out again, Admiral, we will be pursuing this issue of sexual assault. We expect your full cooperation. The issue has not been resolved, and unfortunately, it continues, as we know from all of the coverage of this unacceptable behavior. Mr. Maggs, if confirmed, you will be responsible for reviewing the decisions of military courts of criminal appeals. You will be expected to correct legal errors and provide civilian oversight of the military justice system. Given your record of military and civilian service in the legal realm, you would bring a breadth and depth of experience to this important position. This committee has been at the forefront of recent changes to the military justice system, including the passage of the Military Justice Act of 2016, the most significant military justice reform in years. Neither I nor any of my colleagues would expect you as nominee to be a judge to comment on a matter that might cause you to be disqualified on a future case before the court. However, we look forward to hearing your views on the state of military justice. I thank our witnesses again for their willingness to serve and look forward to their testimony